Marvel's Deadpool VR is Meta's flagship game for 2025 and potentially the last big exclusive from the company for the foreseeable future, and it releases tomorrow, November 18th, exclusively on Quest 3 and Quest 3S, priced at $50. And make no mistake, Deadpool has a lot riding on its shoulders, since last year's Game of the Year was none other than Meta's other big exclusive, Batman Arkham Shadow. And much like Half-Life Alyx, it's regarded by some as one of the best VR games ever made, and that is especially true for standalone VR. So in today's video, I'll be deep diving inside Deadpool VR, which is developed by Twisted Pixel, to tell you everything you need to know before you pull the purchase trigger. And if you find this video helpful, remember to leave a like and get subscribed if you want honest reviews for your games. So I'm going to lay this video out in chapters, going over what Deadpool's gameplay is, including the story, then we'll talk graphics, a bit about sound and the vocal talents, followed by my negatives, and then on to my final thoughts. And all of this will be obviously time-stamped so you can find exactly what you're looking for. Marvel's Deadpool is a VR brawler made up of several chapters, with some epic cinematic cutscenes which oddly can be skipped, 5 boss battles, and 4 random arena fights, which I'll explain more about in a minute. The combat is all about mixing up melee and weapon-based attacks, sometimes for combos to charge up a special meter to hype your Mojo stream viewers, using a huge arsenal of guns, swords, which have to be unlocked using Mojo coins. And before I get too far into that, more on what the Mojo stuff means in a minute. And there's lots of weapons throughout the game, some of them are level specific. For example, when you're fighting waves of zombies made up of the Nova Corps Centurions, you'll get some of their chargeable blasters, or later on Ultra Red's mission, you'll get some very satisfying spinning saw blades. Deadpool VR though is all about fast movement, fast reactions, minor platforming, and try not to get your limbs cut off, which do take some time to grow back, but this never gets old to see in VR, and your job is simply to fight your way to the end boss. There's no open world segments, and it's a very straightforward A to B level design. There's Deadpool comic books to find, some of which will require a little bit of exploration but nothing major, and there's some very cool Marvel cameos, especially when you fight alongside the epic Ghost Rider. I want to add, Marvel's Deadpool is very much not what you'd expect of a Meta exclusive. It's got tons of bad language, lots of violence, seeing you cut enemies in half or literally in bits, and it does a decent job of being what you would expect from a Deadpool game, and I'm glad it doesn't hold back in this regard. To note, there is a kid-friendly mode in the options, which I personally have not tried for this review, but I would assume it would remove all the gore and swearing, plus there's a streamer mode which removes all the licensed music, and this music kicks in when you build up your super meter, which gives you limited access to some special weapons, either at random or by choice, like Thor's hammer or a deck of Gambit's explosively charged playing cards. And as I mentioned earlier, there is some epic cinematic parts, and you're offered to skip these because they are quite full on in terms of motion. But if you've never experienced motion sickness, I would definitely never skip these sections because they play a very memorable part of the game in its entirety. But why are you even on this mission? Well, at the beginning of the game, S.H.I.E.L.D. have tasked Deadpool with saving one of their helicarriers stolen by Flag Smasher, but then you're suddenly transported off-world to compete in a YouTube-style streaming game show called the Mojo Games, and your mission is to retrieve 5 of the Marvel bad guys so Mojo can use these guys to compete in his deadly games and then grow his social media platform. But also, while you're playing, you'll be building up your own viewing audience, which in turn pays you in Mojo coins, and these Mojo coins are used to unlock tons of Deadpool outfits, swords, guns, and most of these have some sort of unique ability, rather than just looking different. As I said in the beginning, there's 5 boss retrieval missions, which makes up the bulk of the gameplay, and they're all set in distinctive environments with unique enemy types, which will eventually lead up to the main boss fight. But these missions are broken up by taking part in Mojo arena matches. Now these matches are completely unlike anything else in the game. You'll be playing game types like Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, Protect the VIP, or just a plain deathmatch, but obviously with a Deadpool style twist. For example, in one of these matches, you use Deadpool to run around feeding him chimichangas, and in some other game types, you'll be assisted by other versions of Deadpool from different dimensions, including, for example, Lady Deadpool. All of this will take you around 8 to 10 hours to complete, and I say complete because the game technically doesn't seem to have an ending, because the ending is to simply replay all the missions again, but with a different Deadpool. There's also still tons of things to unlock, and there's doors on each level that can only be opened by replaying them again, say as Lady Deadpool.
Access denied.
Pretty sure the title of this game is my name.
So now let's talk about graphics, and I think Twisted Pixel have done a fantastic job of making a comic book styled VR game, and I would definitely consider this up there as one of the best standalone VR games in terms of presentation. I haven't witnessed any asynchronous spacewalk, but there is foveated rendering, but it's cleverly hidden from you inside the headset. The game is bright, fast and colourful, but there are points in this game it does suffer from frame rate issues, and this is mostly when there's lots of enemies or explosions going on screen. The frame rate does appear to be dynamic, and the enemies lose half of their animation frames to compensate for this, but this doesn't really take away from the chaotic gameplay, and luckily it doesn't happen too often. Now I don't want to compare this too much to Batman Arkham Shadow, even though lots of people want me to, because Batman was a dark gritty game set in the almost realistic streets of Gotham, as Deadpool sees you go from ancient Japan to outer space, and these levels are very pleasing to the eye. And basically Deadpool isn't trying to look realistic, and it's all the better for it. There's lots of things to interact and mess around with, but these are always with intention. So if you try to experiment, say by opening random lockers, nothing will happen, and that's what I mean by intention. You can only really touch what you're meant to be touching and not much else. Weapons in this game all look great, and some can be two-handed but aren't solid to the touch or each other. Your Deadpool body and your arms and hands look incredible though, and overall I have to say I'm impressed. There's points in this game like when you shoot the miniature bullet-shaped Deadpool out of a sniper rifle that look incredible in VR, and riding on the back of Ghost Rider's bike was truly memorable. Sound obviously plays a massive part too, and they completely nailed it, especially with the special weapons. When you press X after building up your special meter, you'll be greeted with some signature 90s music, and this plays throughout your time using the special weapon, and it's very reminiscent of the end scene of Deadpool and Wolverine, which featured Madonna's Like a Prayer. It's a very nice touch, and fans of the Deadpool films will absolutely love it. As voice acting goes, Neil Patrick Harris does an incredible job of voicing Deadpool, and recording this amount of voice lines must have took an exceptional amount of time, because it's very rare you hear the same voice line twice during the action. It does happen of course, but nowhere near as often as you'd expect, but I wanted to add it's very obvious Deadpool isn't voiced by Ryan Reynolds. In fact, my wife walked in while I was playing and guessed it was Neil Patrick Harris's voice you could hear without even knowing what game I was playing. So yes, it would have been better to have Ryan Reynolds, but Neil definitely does a fantastic job.
If you're gonna be whispering sweet nothings in my ear, I need a little something something to help me pay attention.
Keeping you alive is not reason enough.
I have ADHD on fucking steroids, girlfriend. Just spill some juicy deets so that I can lock you in and don't confuse you with all the other voices in my head.
As for everyone else in the game, the voice talent is very high quality, and the animations of all the key characters is absolutely fantastic. Now let's get into some negatives before my overall thoughts. As we know, Deadpool is called the Merc with a mouth, and for good reason. He's known for never shutting up, and that is definitely the case in Deadpool VR. And there's plenty of moments, due to being in VR, the monologue can get a bit boring. Sometimes it feels like you're standing there for say 5 minutes, just waiting for your own character to shut up so you can get on with playing. And this kills a lot of the momentum versus adding to the story. On a flat screen I feel it wouldn't have been such an issue, but being in VR also carries its own sense of urgency. And don't get me wrong, the dialogue throughout this game is very clever and often pretty funny, but I also found myself yawning a few times, especially during one sequence which lasted around 20 minutes, where I had to help Dead Samurai move into the afterlife. And this involved backtracking the same level 3 times to do some meaningless tasks like dropping a flower into a lake and then listening to even more conversation, and it really did feel like it slammed the brakes on the game when it was just getting started. There's also some missing button cues, which if you're not looking in the right direction at the exact moment you need to, the flashing A button won't appear, and you'll be left just wandering around wondering what to do. During introductions or the arena modes, your weapons are greyed out, making them unusable until the game wants you to use them, and on one occasion I just happened to have my greyed out guns or swords in my hands, and when it transitioned to the gameplay they stayed greyed out, therefore making them unusable until that mission had ended. There's also some weird pausing going on during some monologue sequences when I moved my head, but this was early on in the game and didn't happen at all thereafter. And one more bug to note, on one of the last levels I just kept dying for absolutely no reason. Aside from all of that, which I feel can be easily fixed by some patches, it was pretty smooth sailing.
Go
Guess we'll just take a little break then, huh?
The big issue for me though is the combat, which is very hit and miss. If you give yourself to the game, you can make the fights feel fluid and fun, but if there's a moment you simply relax and start playing casually, you'll find you can simply swing the swords up and down and run around in a circle, shooting your never-ending supply of ammo with your Deadpool guns, and this takes away a lot of the fun. The boss fights are also not very challenging, and you'll rarely die if you simply just don't stand still. Overall, Deadpool has been fun for a one-time playthrough, and it's definitely a high-quality title, but I think it has lost its instant replayability, mainly due to the long and sometimes tedious amount of dialogue. But when I push myself to have fun, I definitely can, but the game doesn't necessarily feel fun all the time, and this can cause moments of unengagement, especially when combined with the long drawn out sections. And then to add to all of that, the arena matches, which do add variety, also feature some pretty mediocre AI, and in the end sometimes can feel just like an obstacle to get through. I was kind of relieved once I finished the campaign, and I know some of you wanted to know this, but I still believe Batman is a much better game in many ways. However, I do see myself jumping back into Deadpool maybe in a month's time, or maybe just after Christmas. It is a fun and beautiful game, and it delivers a lot to Marvel fans, so I do give Deadpool a buy recommendation overall, but I think if you go into this not expecting deep combat and more of a fun game, you will have a good time, and for big fans of Marvel and especially Deadpool, you will have an absolute blast. That's if you can put up with all the dialogue. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.